had a feeling we may have to do a part two because there's so much we're not even going to be able to touch here. But I know you grew up in a musical family, or I know your dad played for the St. Louis Symphony, right? And I don't know if was your mom also involved in music or a teacher or
Yeah,
something?
they both played cello, and they actually had the same cello teacher as teenagers, which is kind of
Oh,
funny.
wow.
That's how they met. And then she also taught piano. So I learned a lot about piano from her. And my brother, believe it or not, my brother Rob, somehow, because he's a drummer, figured out so much piano by ear. And he's 4 years older than me. I still think he's my primary piano teacher
Because I
because
know the story. He actually started playing the drum or the piano. You started playing drums, but then you switched at some point, right?
I wish it was that cool. It wasn't quite that. He started playing piano. He taught me some piano.
Yeah.
Then he became a drummer, and then I wanted to be a drummer.
Okay.
But so I just wanted to be just like Rob, you know. But it just made sense. He said he actually bought me a keyboard when I was a teenager and said, "No, you're going to play keyboards in this band."
Okay. So
And I'm so glad he did.
that turned out to be a pretty good move. So
Yeah.
not every musician has this sort of entrepreneurial drive that you do and that we share. Like I said, a lot of them just get disappointed and they kind of think that they're victims and they don't like to have this optimistic looking for opportunities. So where do you think that came from? How did you develop that? If you can articulate that.
I've been thinking, I'd like to think that I have some kind of a special drive, but honestly, I'm 53 and I'm really looking back on like when I worked at Emo's Pizza and how much I couldn't, I think my attention deficit issues made it so I just couldn't even stand to be in one place for 7 hours. And I just thought, this is just like prison. I'll do anything to not do this.
I
And
can
so
relate. Yeah. I always knew that I would never be happy working for somebody else. And I described this as I was always stubbornly determined to figure out a way to do something that I enjoyed doing and be able to support myself doing it. Sounds like you had a similar
I really
experience.
did. And I just couldn't stick with a job of that sort. And I just thought, why, I got to do something. And I didn't care if I was broke, which I was for a long time. You know, I was teaching piano and I was playing in pop bands, and anyone who would hire me, I played a lot of blues, especially back when I was in my 20s and 30s. Tons of blues gigs. I mean, you could play blues every night for $50 for 4 hours, you know. And I was willing to do that as long as it took. I mean, anything that kept me out of having a job.
Right.
I was just happy to be playing music and not working. So a lot of it was just my aversion to jobs.
That's a big motivator. Admit it.
It really is. I just wanted to do anything else, and I didn't care. Really didn't imagine it would ever be a real big success. But my brother was funny because when I was starting to write jingles in my 20s, he said, if we could just market any of these things that we do in a way that we can get a lot of that work, then we'll be pretty good. And so we recorded stuff all the time and we made cold calls and we just tried everything that came up. And we also, to this day, I talk to Rob every day. We work together most days. We try something new every day. So let's say 10 years ago, we started doing music festivals.
Mm.
And each thing that we start, we assume that you will probably lose some money. You try not to spend a lot, but you lose some money to learn something. And that's something that we've done a lot, which is start something new that we're excited about with the hope that it will at least break even or start to make a few bucks, as long as it's something we're really excited about. Jazz festivals, we've done a number over the years. Right now, we're just doing about 2 to 3 different events of our own per year in the St. Louis area.
And that's amazing. I know that's something you've built over the last several years. That's a full-time gig, or can be on its own. Just the amount of things that you've done in the festivals, Autumn Hill Records, you're releasing stuff by other people. You got the Clayton Studios. How do you juggle all of those things, Mike? Have you learned time management skills to be able to do all these things? You delegate to people? What's your secret?
I've gotten a little bit better at delegating, but seriously, Rob and I like to do most stuff ourselves. We do work with several friends who have different various skills at things, and certainly we do work with people on things. When we were a little more involved in the music festivals as a business, we were really hiring people to do things. They got a little bit out of our control, and we realized what we really like is smaller festivals, things that we can really manage ourselves pretty much.
Yeah.
or we can partner with a city. As you know, St. Louis is a funny place where we have like 150 different cities.
Yeah.
So we usually partner with one of the municipalities, and then we sort of split the work and get things done.
That's a good point about because a lot of people aspire bigger and better, and I want to hire employees and have a team and all this stuff. And a lot of, especially a lot of YouTubers in the past year, have that reached this burnout point. And you build this staff, and then you have all these mouths to feed that you're responsible for, and then you get stressed out over that. So I'm not saying don't grow, but growing for the sake of growth is not always the best thing for each individual, right? Sometimes keeping it small,
Right.
manageable is the best path, you know.
Did you happen to read Derek Sivers' book about his CD Baby experience?
I've read
It's
a lot of his stuff over the years. Yeah,
I'll tell you the premise of it, and I thought it was just genius because he didn't reveal what he was doing. It's only about 80 pages, but what he does is he talks about the development as it goes along, and you notice that, well, you don't notice until he points it out at the end of the book. He says, you notice that in the beginning how excited I seemed about the whole thing. And as I went along, the more and more I became a manager and the bigger it got and the more successful it got, you might have noticed throughout this book that it became less and less fun. And he says that was the key to why he wanted to get rid of it and start over.
mhm,
And I thought that's such an important lesson to not grow things out of your control. And sometimes people say, "Wow, I love this restaurant. This is the best food. Why don't you just franchise it out or open 5 locations?" And then, now I get it because every time they do that, the quality goes down. I'm
right.
sure their joy goes down, their stress goes up. A lot of times, some of them just fail because they can't be everywhere. So I feel that way about all the things we do. And Autumn Hill Records is still, it's really just my brother and I still.
That's amazing.
Because of that, you don't want things to get out of control because that's often when it stops working.
Yeah, and it's safe to say, and I don't expect you to reveal overly personal data here, but just with the streaming alone, and I'm guessing other things that you do, you guys financially are doing okay, right?
They add up. And the
Yeah,
consistency is the important thing. I mean, a lot of people make a ton of money on an album and then it goes away. Life, it doesn't work very well to have boom and bust. And by having lots of minor hits, I think is the key. And I think that's just true in any industry. You need to be able to do something on a fairly regular basis for it to really successfully work.
so I want to point out a couple of sort of like contrarian things that you said because I'm known for affirmations. I think you and I generally have a positive outlook. We're looking for opportunities. There's some nuances there, like you mentioned when you started to do the festivals. You went into it knowing, kind of assuming you're going to lose money, as opposed to this is going to be the biggest success right out of the gate, and then being disappointed. You had, I don't know if you want to call it realistic expectations, but you didn't set the bar too high, right? Knowing we're probably going to lose money on this first one. And you said something else earlier that's escaping me now. There was a similar thing where you were just not being too optimistic. So it's a tough thing because most people lean to the pessimistic and assume the worst all the time, and that doesn't serve them. But you can still have
Right.
ambitions and balance that
Yeah.
all out, right?
Well, yeah, let me explain what I mean. I think that the idea is that you're optimistic, even knowing that you have to be realistic at the beginning that you don't know what you're doing. And so when you're trying something, you realize, well, this is an uphill battle. First of all, nobody knows what this festival is. We don't know who's going to show up. Optimism it needs to be a little bit long term because you have to be realistic about the fact that you might lose something in the beginning. That's the investment phase. You don't know if people will show up to your festivals, and nobody knows that it exists. You just don't know what's going to happen. So you start small, try not to lose too much at the beginning, and you just assume if it's something good that it's going to grow. And I have to say, it's not like we turned the music festival thing into a big business, but we realized at a certain point that we could. We learned about how to make money with ticket sales. Like, I really hate selling tickets. We did a lot of free festivals. In fact, now I'm back to free festivals because I just like that people can come and go. The whole thing with wristbands and tickets and the whole thing and security, so much security, that I think it kills the vibe. So it's just a passion thing to want to have these festivals. So, but you can work with, we're just getting into the weeds, but you get the idea that it would be like you work with the wine sellers and the food vendors and the sponsors, and you can make more than it costs. And that would
Right.
be enough for me. So we keep it simpler, now. But for a few years, we were really ramping it up and realizing that you could do a lot with this and you could turn it into a full-time job, and it could be lucrative and it could be fun, except that the bigger it gets, the fun starts to turn into stress too. So I've gone back to, I'd rather just put on a festival that I think is a lot of fun to go to, and it's easy to put together, and it feels more organic and community based and all that.
One thing I've been suggesting, I got it, and I remind myself of this too, but it's the advice I have for other people when they're stressed out about pursuing something is like, ask yourself, how can I make this easy and fun and
Right.
easy? I think you've mentioned it.
Yep.
It's come up a couple of times here. I would need to keep this to be enjoyable and not overstressed. But sometimes you don't know until you put it out there, until you do it the first several times even, and you realize, oh, I like this aspect. I don't like that. We're going to remove this. We're going to add more. And so you tweak it, hone it as you go along, and then it evolves over time. What might work, you're excited about one year, you might not be so much a different year or a different era of your life. So let me ask you a final question here. If someone, certainly if they're a musician wanting to get into the streaming game, or just somebody in a creative or heart-centered business, people that truly want to not only express themselves but make a difference with their art or their gifts, and they're wanting to create these multiple streams of income, what's some like basic advice? You can summarize stuff we talked about earlier, or I mean anything that we didn't cover.
I mean, let me just start with an obvious point, which is nothing has been better for creative people than the internet. I mean, that's pretty obvious. There are 1,000 million things you can do with the internet. I'll give you a little example. There are tools you can use. Obviously, music distribution, but also book publishing online, ebooks. I mean, you can just write something and essentially just put it out for nothing or for a few dollars. The bar is so low, and some people say that's the problem. There's just so much junk out there. But I still think that the cream rises to the top. And in terms of tools, like this recently, I realized I wanted to have a sheet music store for a little while for some of my original piano music. You could just search Michael Silverman sheet music and you'll find it. And I just had a few things up there. Then I got more and more requests for certain pieces. It's just another little small side business. But I just didn't have time to sit and create the charts because that takes time. I mean, if you're not fast with Finale or one of these programs, Sibelius, that takes a lot of time. So I just didn't have the time to do it. I went on Fiverr. I found guys all over the world who can do it cheaply, do a great job, and they're happy to have the work.
And then you got something to sell and share with people that are requesting that.
Yeah, and they do an incredible job compared to me because I don't focus on creating sheet music that is as nice as what they would do with all the dynamics and phrasing, and everything looks fantastic. Even the fonts are perfect.
But you wouldn't have discovered that opportunity unless you paid attention. People were requesting it, I assume, and so you wanted to meet the demand of the requests. And so that seems to be a theme here too. Be prolific, put a lot of stuff out, and then really important is pay attention to the response that you're getting and lean into what's working, lean away from what's not. Right. And there's no way you can plan this. You can't have a 3-year business plan to figure this stuff out. It's just like putting one foot in front of the other, trying stuff, taking it day by day. Right.
Of course, the last thing to me is try all the different things that you want to do. If it's possible to do all of the things you want to do, try lots of different things, because you don't know what's going to financially work or what's going to find an audience. So, yeah, pay attention to what works.
Mm-hmm. And do more of that. Awesome, Mike. I knew that this would be eye-opening for a lot of people. Where can people find you online? Where's the best place to search or to go and find what you're up to?
Well, let's see. For our group, it's bachtothefuture.net. That's B-A-C-H, Bach to the Future.
Bach to the Future.
And then I have michaelsilvermanpiano.com. Those are good. Everything else links off of those too, so that's good enough.
All right, and of course, that's just Michael Silverman on all the streaming platforms to find your solo piano and all jazz stuff and all that will be there as well.
And also our YouTube channel, Autumn Hill Records, which is something we've been focused on a lot lately, is getting into video, which is an absolute blast too.
Oh, cool! I have to check that out. I don't know if I've been there lately. And you're putting your own music out with you and your brother and your friends, but you also are releasing albums by other artists as well, right?
Yeah, we have. It's very exciting because we have a lot of our heroes are on our label too. Like drummer Dave Weckl has a couple of albums now. And I did some stuff with John Patitucci and Jeff Lorber. Some of these are collaborative records. Gary Meek and Tom Kennedy, Jay Oliver. But yeah, lots of artists that we like to work with,
Yeah.
and they're on our label too.
And we didn't even talk about, like I said, there's so much stuff that we just barely scratched the surface. Like you playing with some of your idols, like Eric Marienthal, right? It was
Oh yeah,
who
Eric.
played with Chick Corea. I mean, so a lot of these people that you idolize, now you're collaborating with them, and I just think that's wonderful.
Aside from everything else, the best thing about being in the business is getting to work with your heroes and to work with your friends who are musicians. I mean, playing with you was great. Playing with so many people in town and from all over the world at this point. You know, we record online with lots of our heroes on a regular basis. We're working with Roy Futureman Wooten on some stuff right now from Bela Fleck and the Flecktones.
Wow, that is amazing. I want to remind our friends who are either watching on YouTube or listening on one of my podcasts, if you're enjoying this and you're not already subscribed, subscribe, follow, whatever the term is on the platform that you happen to be on, because not only will you get future interviews and episodes, but it also sends a signal to that platform that people are interested in this, and it'll spread to more people. So we appreciate you doing that. Michael, thanks again for your time. Good to connect with you again, my friend. Appreciate it.
It's so good to see you, Bob.
All right. Have a good one. See you all later, folks. So long for now. Do you think of yourself as a creative entrepreneur or a heart-centered business person? Perhaps you're a musician, author, artist, or performer. Or maybe you're a coach, teacher, or energy worker. Or you just have an inspired message you want to share with more people. If this describes you, I invite you to join the Magnetize Your Tribe community. This is where you'll learn how to attract perfect, soul-aligned fans and paying customers without feeling spammy, boastful, or overwhelmed. I'll share the principles that allowed me to grow my YouTube channel to hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and the lessons I've learned from publishing 16 books, attracting a sizable online following, and being self-employed for the past 20 years. Just visit bobbakerinspiration.com/heart, and it's free to join. That's bobbakerinspiration.com/HEART.